I'm Regina. This is Allison. We're from UMA, Universal Market Access, UMA. And today I'm going to be talking about synthetic tokens, why they're important, and how you can build with them here in Boston. So I'm going to go through what synthetic tokens are and why they're important. I'm going to demo how you can actually use our synthetic token builder on testnet on Ruby to build your own synthetic tokens, and then eventually use them in whatever projects you have. And then lastly, talk a little bit about what you can do with synthetic tokens, give you a couple of starter ideas, and also give you a couple hints as to what you're looking for. So let's get started. What are synthetic tokens? They're a general class of types of tokens, right? So they're anything that's pegged to a particular price index. An example of this is MakerDAO's DAI. I think that's a great example, actually, where someone has deposited ETH to create synthetic USD that's backed by a portion of that ETH, right? So what you've created is you've created synthetic USD tokens backed by ETH, in fact, over-collateralized by ETH, but all you've said is that each of those DAI is supposed to be pegged to a price index, and that's the price index of USD. And the really important reason that we care about synthetic tokens is that you never have to actually own USD, you never actually have to own Bitcoin, you never actually have to own a particular stock index in order to actually get price exposure to those indices, right? So this is why we think they're super interesting. Because you can imagine that normally when we want to trade different types of assets, we have to hold them in order to actually buy and sell them with each other in the real world, right? But with synthetics, the whole idea is that we can actually still trade cash and move money around based on the price of those assets or other things we care about for those assets without actually having to have any of us ever own or touch them. Cool? So that's why I say that synthetic tokens are this general class of things, because they're tokens where the value associated with them comes from this price feed, and that price feed can be any number, right? And it basically gives us a lot more flexibility to have different kinds of financial risk. So UMA, in fact, back in March or so, created a synthetic US stocks token. So this is a token that was backed by DAI, and in fact over-collateralized by DAI. But the amount of DAI that was backing that token fluctuated with where this US stock index was. So if the US stock index was at, say, 2,500, there would be 2,500 DAI backing that token. If it went up to 3,000, there would be 3,000 DAI backing that token, and so on. And so that's really cool. You've created a token that when we trade it with other people, has backing value equal to this random price feed that we set. None of us actually had to actually own the actual US stock index in order to have that kind of economic use. So, what are UMA synthetic tokens? We've created a tool that lets you create tokens like this. So what you're going to do is deposit a bunch of DAI. We're going to deposit DAI into this, what we're calling a token facility. Deposit DAI into here. That's the lightest green one. And so a portion of that is going to be used as backing collateral to fund these synthetic tokens. In addition, you're going to be required to have at least the required amount of collateral. So you have to have total collateral in excess of that. You have to exceed the total required collateral for your token facility. This looks a lot like a Maker CDP. In the sense that in a Maker CDP we have is you have ETH. A portion of that ETH, right, represents backing collateral for your DAI. But you always have to maintain at least enough ETH to match you to make sure that you're well collateralized, right? So I think it's right. You have to have at least 150% of the value of the DAI in ETH. So that would be this amount, and then you have a little bit of extra cushion on top, so that you're over collateralized beyond your liquidation price. So it's the same idea here. But what we've done with UMA is instead of depositing a volatile asset like ETH and then borrowing a stable asset like DAI, you're going to deposit a stable asset like DAI and then borrow a volatile asset. So that volatile token could track the price of Bitcoin in DAI, or the price of Tesla in dollars, but we just use DAI instead of dollars. Or it could even track the number of Twitter followers that someone has. Right? So you could have a synthetic token where the number of DAI that back that token is equal to the number of Twitter followers that Andrew Yang has. So you can do all of these things, is what I meant when I said that it makes things very flexible. It just allows you to create tokens whose value is whatever you want it to be. Okay, so again, I said this is a lot like Maker CDPs. Naturally, the question is what happens when there's not enough collateral, when the total collateral is less than the required amount of collateral. And just like other protocols, there is a liquidation process associated with these custom synthetic tokens. So what I've just drawn here is that, let's say the total collateral, right, everything in here, is actually less than the required collateral. It's up to here. So you've got this shortfall in red. Then what's going to happen is a portion of the over-collateralization is going to be assessed as a penalty. And that's going to go from whoever owns that token facility to the people who own the synthetic tokens. So a portion of that is paid from the token facility owner to the owners of the synthetic tokens. So it's slightly different from Maker CDPs, where a portion of that fee is paid to whoever writes the contract, right, writes the CDP. But it is somewhat similar in the sense that there's a penalty that's assessed, and then the whole thing kind of liquidates and winds down. So that's the overall idea. If you guys have more questions about it, of course, I can go into more detail in the Q&A. But the last point I want to mention about these synthetic tokens is that unlike Maker, unlike other sort of like synthetic tokenization platforms, these tokens will have an expiration timestamp. This is important for a couple of financial engineering reasons that I can also go into more detail about. But I just want to give you guys a heads up that after that expiration timestamp, the amount of backing collateral is fixed, and anyone holding those tokens can redeem them for the backing collateral. Right? And so in a way, it's as if your economic risk at that point after expiration stops. So if you held one of these synthetic tokens that was the number of Twitter followers that Andrew Yang has, after expiration, the number of DAI that you're going to get for redeeming that token is just fixed. It doesn't move anymore. And it's going to update to the latest price that it had, the latest number of Twitter followers that it had, right before that expiration. And then in this diagram, right, any excess collateral beyond the backing collateral will be paid back to the token facility owner. Before expiration, the only difference is that only the token facility owner can redeem his tokens against the facility. So it has to be, for example, to put this back into Maker CDP terms, only the CDP owner can close out his CDP. Okay, so how do we create synthetic tokens? I'm going to do a quick demo now of how you can use the UMA synthetic token builder. I'll also put a link to this in, I guess, the Discord. But I will say one thing about this. You have to be on RateB. That's kind of the main thing. And you also have to have testnet, ETH, and testnet DAI on RateB in order to use the synthetic token builder. So in my case, I already have one created. But I want to show you how to use this app, and we'll create synthetic tokens together. So to get started, open a token facility. Yeah, that's true. So I already have testnet ETH and testnet DAI. I'll show you, if you click this, you'll get sent to the RateB faucet. What you have to do is basically plug your Ethereum address into a tweet or a Facebook post, and then send a link to that here, and it will start giving you RateB ETH. And then to get more testnet DAI, once you have that ETH, you have testnet ETH to pay the gas to get your testnet DAI. So then you're going to just go through this, confirm that, and then have a transaction eventually go through. That will give you more room for the testnet die.
If you have trouble there getting testnet of either, or you just don't have a Twitter or Facebook account or don't want to expose it, just ping us in the Discord channel and we'll send you some.
Cool. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's open a token facility. So this, at this stage, we're actually just creating the facility that we're then going to use to borrow tokens. So right now we're just setting up the facility. So what asset should we track, or what price index should we track? Someone pick something out of this list.
Chinese yuan.
Sorry?
Chinese yuan.
Ah, okay. Wonderful. So we're basically saying we're going to now create a facility that's going to give us the ability to create synthetic tokens that track CNY. Great. Let's pick an expiry date.
October.
Perfect. Okay. We've basically at UMA curated this list of expirations so that it's easier to sort of aggregate liquidity. Everyone kind of knows that these are the regular dates that are going to expire. So October. And so here we've got a summary, right? We're going to launch this token facility. It's going to track CNY/USD. We're going to have to over-collateralize it by 2%, which is small because CNY/USD is not very volatile.
Yeah.
It's going to expire or settle on October 31st. And then this is just a contract name that it's spit out by automatically generating a name and the token symbol. And I'm okay with these. So let's go ahead and create the facility. Okay, great. Now, our facility is created, right? So that box that I had in that diagram, that's now been created. Now we have to authorize it to actually fund it and to begin issuing synthetic tokens to ourselves. Let's go ahead and authorize that. So now we're ready to actually begin funding that facility. In this case, we can see the current price of CNY/USD. So this is the price of 1 Chinese yuan in USD. So let's say that I wanted to create 10 tokens. That means that I would need 1.4 DAI, right, ideally. So let's put in 5 DAI to just be like over-collateralized. And you'll see it calculates for you that the max number of tokens you could safely create is 34, so I know that I'm well over collateralized. Borrow these tokens. So now I'm at the stage where I've begun funding it, so I just want to show you guys. So now I've actually put in all of that collateral, and it's telling me that, of course, I have the backing collateral needed for 10 tokens. I've also over-collateralized to meet that 102% ratio, and I've also got some cushion on top.
So you had more in there, and you pulled 10 out to make it turn into DAI.
So I deposited, how much DAI did I put in? 5. So I put in 5 DAI, right?
Right.
And now I know that I only needed like 1.4 DAI to have enough backing collateral. Those 1.4 DAI are going to create 10 synthetic CNY tokens. Each of those tokens is worth 0.14 DAI.
Okay.
Cool. So now let's see what I did. So I've created this token facility. And what it's telling me is I have this token facility that lets me short those tokens, but I also borrow those tokens myself, so I'm long those tokens. Does that make sense?
Yeah, your future funding for yourself.
Exactly. So I'm short the token, but to myself. Great. So it's telling me again, I have 10 tokens, right? So the total exposure is 10, and then I own all 10, so they all net out to 0, right? If I went ahead and gave these tokens to someone in the room, this number would go down, but this number would not, right? Because the total number of tokens that this facility thinks are outstanding is 10, even if I give away like 5 of them to Allison. Okay, again, I can go in, I can manage this position, right? So just like a CDP, I can borrow more tokens, which is like borrowing more DAI. I can repay the debt by sending back some of my tokens. Again, because I'm the token facility owner, I can redeem my tokens against my own facility. And then here, right, I can either withdraw or deposit some additional DAI to make sure that I'm always over-collateralized. Make sense? Cool. So that's how the synthetic token builder works. If you guys have questions about how to use it, definitely ask us in our Discord or come up to us. I want to spend the last couple of minutes just talking about what you can do with these tokens and why they're important. So I said that you have a lot of flexibility with synthetic tokens, right? That was like the main value add that I was describing. But the reason I think that's really cool is these are 3 examples of applications that you might be interested in. So with that synthetic token builder, we could build this synthetic Chinese yuan, right? And what could you do with that? You could create a Chinese yuan denominated wallet for Chinese users, right? So normally, we're really focused on, I'd say, like giving people wallets that have ETH or DAI or other stable coins in US dollars. But again, now you can create stable coins denominated in other currencies. You can now create localized products for those audiences. You could also create synthetic Bitcoin, and if you sell them to other people, remember that here, I'm short CNY in effect, right? Because I got this token facility. So if I sold all of my long tokens, I would no longer be short the tokens to myself. I'd be short the tokens to someone else, and I'd have effectively leveraged short exposure to CNY. Make sense? Okay. Sorry. Okay, so if we were to create this synthetic Bitcoin, you could also get leveraged short exposure to Bitcoin without actually needing to own Bitcoin, right? So this is important because instead of now having to go onto like a protocol like say ETHBoston, where you have to physically borrow Bitcoin to short it, you're now able to get synthetically short Bitcoin. And all you have to do is find a counterparty who just wants to buy 1 synthetic Bitcoin on Ethereum. Right? That's like really different. Like before, to get leveraged short Bitcoin, you had to actually go out and like borrow Bitcoin or short and then short it. Either like on your own, right? Like going out and finding a counterparty who will lend you Bitcoin, or via this kind of like hidden protocol like ETHBoston, where like they kind of do all that for you in the background. Here you can actually do it in a very like pure form. And the last example I'll give is something that's like weird and creative and maybe is interesting to some of you guys, but there were these Reddit donuts a while back, and these donuts were trading on, I guess, a couple of different ways, but they were being sent to people to track how many upvotes certain like Reddit posts had, or I think certain users had, but they weren't backed by anything, right? They were just like, they were akin to Reddit Gold or Silver in that sense. But this time you can now create Reddit donuts that have actual backing value. So we could say, like, let's create some token facilities. And those token facilities will have a price feed that tracks the number or the amount of karma that a particular user has. Right? And then I can sell you those tokens if you think that that user has like really good means. And I can get leverage short that user. Right? And there are all these kinds of weird things that you can do when you're changing that price feed and making things that are synthetic. So what are we looking for? We have this bounty out there. We're giving away $3,000 to a project that has the most creative use of tokens that are made with our synthetic token builder.
3,000 USD?
Yes.
We can pay an ETH for direct
USD work.
And so I just want to give you guys a couple like of more suggestions as to what we're looking for. Because when we say creativity, I think there are 2 types of creativity we mean. There's creativity at this level, right, which is different applications of the tokens. So that could mean, right, like now that I've told you that here we actually just created synthetic Chinese yuan. Now that we come up with a creative way to use that, I mean, I already have the tokens, so I can just send them to you, and then you can plug them into your own project. So if you can come up with creative ways to use that, that's one thing we're looking for. On the other hand, if you have your own special idea for what kind of price feed you want to use, that's another type of creativity. Right, so I suggested 3 ideas here. Bitcoin and Chinese yuan, those price feeds you actually do have in the DApp. So if you want to use those now, you can. But if you have ideas for other price feeds, we can also talk later about how to actually give you tokens that track those. So I gave you Reddit donut upvote numbers as an example. I gave you Twitter followers as an example. Maybe fantasy football, now that football season, right? Fantasy football season is upon us. Right, there are all these different other ways that you can be creative. So I'd say that's kind of how we're thinking about creativity. Cool? Any questions? Yes?
Yeah, so I had a question about this price feeds.
Okay.
And, are they like on the app, the facility, you only have a list of different things, like how can I, like if I wanted like a pricing like for something that's not listed there, is it possible?
Yeah, so I'd say for the purposes of this hackathon, just given we do have something here that just gives you like a custom index, right? And that'll give you kind of like a dummy token that effectively tells us that, okay, it's a custom thing, it's not one of our price feeds. And then you can use that token for now. But if it's something that like later you do want to build on after the hackathon, we can definitely have a longer conversation about whether it's a price feed we'd be willing to support or if we know of any other data sources for that.
Okay, and then also, do you have any API that interact with it? Is there like an API so I can know this programmatically? Like?
Yeah, so I don't think we have an API like product per se, but I'm more than happy to walk you through like certain portions of our GitHub and show you like the particular like smart contracts that are particularly relevant for this DApp. So I'm happy to like show you, I mean, I'll just include a link I guess in the Discord later. But even though we don't have like an API product per se, still happy to like, our GitHub's open for everyone to read and happy to show you the contracts. Yeah.
If the data feed for the index is data that's already on chain, is that easier to implement? Would that be something that still you guys would have to like set up?
Good question. I'm gonna send that over to Hart in my notes.
We talked about this a little
Wait,
bit.
what was the question?
So basically, if you had a data source that was on chain,
Yeah.
could you have the contract read it? And the answer is like absolutely you could, but it's going to require some like code changes.
Would it require code changes like specifically to your like core facility contract, or?
I have to take a closer look, so we don't have like our core engineers that know this stuff really deeply aren't here. But I'd have to take a closer look, and yeah, there's a couple like definitely workarounds that we could work through.
What if it's like CoinCap API?
Say once more.
Like a CoinCap API?
Yeah, we actually can. So okay, without like over-promising, like what Regina said, we have this easy ability to have like fake tokens. Is there an ability to like add new price feeds? Like yes, but some of it requires like deploying a bunch of contracts and a whole system, and it becomes more complicated. So happy to like talk about that and all that too. And then again, doing an on-chain thing, which we need an API.
Yeah.
It's definitely technically possible, but I need to look a little bit.
Would you say that would potentially be easier than like an actual like API price feed? Because it's on chain, like you wouldn't need to use oracles, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look before.
Okay,
I answer
all right,
that.
right.
Yeah, just I don't want to like miss.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, but CoinMarketCap type data like is an API that is accessible. It's not built in by default, so we can talk a bit more about like what the challenges are there and what we need to do.
I don't know. I think choices. What company is this? Who is this?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Again, I think like having level storage is one like very attractive feature, for example, in the Bitcoin example. On the other hand, if your subproject is looking to open token facility and you are able to have a real world hedge or otherwise offset your risk, your leverage short risk, what you've effectively created is a position where you're flat risk, right? So let's say initially I would have been leveraged short, but I can offset this by actually sourcing another long position to get effectively long the risk of the token in some other way, right? Then I'm flat risk, but there are ways to make money still in this environment. So it's a little bit complicated, but the rough idea is that if I'm someone who has this token facility, I can create these tokens and then sell them to the market at a premium, right? And then if I sell them to the market at a premium, I get to, over the lifetime of the token until expiration, I get to collect the spread between the price at which I sold them and their true backing price over that period of time. And in a way, these tokens then become kind of like forwards on the underlying asset, right? And they reflect this kind of funding rate for the asset. They reflect in some way the cost of someone like me as the token facility owner to have all this stuff on my balance sheet. It reflects the cost of me having enough money so that I can afford to maintain this hedge, as well as put in all the capital to sell these tokens, right? And so it's a measure of my balance sheet. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So that's why you might see that these tokens might sell at a premium to their backing price speed or price index, right? And that's another way that a token facility owner could make money. A little bit more complicated, a little bit more nuanced and more moving parts, but I think it's definitely an interesting proposition or value prop to more sophisticated market participants.
And just to, because that just made me just wonder about one thing. So
yeah.
in the Bitcoin example, for me to sell it, do you guys provide a marketplace, or do I have to go out and like, how's the marketplace work?
So UMA has not set up any decentralized exchange or exchange service or any preferred. We don't have anything like that right now. I think the best way for someone to actually go about doing this is probably to integrate with like Uniswap or some other kind of automated market maker. I will say, right now everything's on testnet, so I wouldn't worry too much about the actual like sourcing a ton of liquidity for the tokens right now. But it's something we can discuss in more detail when we have some other ideas around like how you might do it.
Yeah, I'll buy your testnet tokens.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, that's the main reason why we're focused on creative uses of the tokens themselves rather than like the whole shebang. Depending on the specific product that you're interested in creating, there may be market makers that we can put you in touch with that could be interested in taking the other side of the business of your mainnet product. But while it's on testnet, like just think about how to use the tokens.
Cool.
Could you answer the questions on the last slide?
Oh, well, these are if you guys didn't have questions. You have such great questions that we don't need to go through this. A lot of the answers to these actually are, so these first two are more detailed like financial engineering answers, so I won't go into too much detail right now. This kind of was your question, right? Like how do we ensure that there's liquidity? We don't know that there will be, but don't worry about it because it's on testnet. And then the last answer is UMA is also not just creating these kinds of smart contract templates for synthetic assets, but also providing an Oracle service or a data verification mechanism, DVM. And there is a value accrual process based on increasing method margin relying on the DVM. We've got a white paper out about that, which you can read, or you can come by and talk to us.
Why don't you give a short answer though on the top two questions?
All right, so
short.
For the first question, why did the tokens expire? They expire so that eventually the price of the token will, you know for sure that the price of the token will match the price of the price index. That's the shortest answer. And the second is because the tokens expire. And if you want more details, you have to come talk to me or ask more questions.
Well, the question is a regulatory thing.
Oh.
Well, I'll answer that. So there is a like the CFTC is a derivative exception where if your derivative is less than 28 days. But that's actually not the point here. Just to go in 2 seconds in more detail, is if the tokens don't expire, if they're perpetual, you can have these weird circumstances where, say, demand for the synthetic token way outstrips supply. So the price of the synthetic token could trade at a massive premium relative to the actual underlier. And there's no mechanism. If there's no mechanism to bring it back, it could just stay there. Expiry provides a mechanism to bring it back because then arbitrageurs know that at some point in the future, these two things will converge and they will redeem for each other.
And if you want real-world examples of this happening in the crypto universe, you can look at Bitflyer and BitMEX. Both are derivatives exchanges. They trade Bitcoin perpetuals. BitMEX, to make sure that their perpetual Bitcoin contract matches the actual price of Bitcoin, it forces this like transfer payment between long and shorts based on the supply and demand imbalance. Bitflyer tried to do this, tried to create a Bitcoin perpetual, didn't implement that transfer payment thing, and like totally fucked everyone over. Basically on Bitflyer, their customer base was all retail. The price of their Bitcoin perpetual just kept going like this, and at one point it was like a 40% premium versus the real price of Bitcoin, and they just could never get it back down. So like it was a total failure. They've since changed it, I think, but.
So like traditional futures contracts have expiries, and if the futures contract, it can't trade that far away from the underlier because an arbitrageur will do this trade and arb it out.
And then it's
and,
worthless.
Sorry?
The mechanism wouldn't be worthless. It's going to match 1-to-1. It's never going below the.
Well, so like let's say you have an expiry at the end of the year for something, right? And the real life version's trading at $100, and the synthetic version could be trading at 110, right? In that case, then you sell the synthetic version, buy the real version, and you know that by the end of the year you'll make $10.
Right.
Whereas if the synthetic version is trading at a discount at $90, then you do the opposite. You buy the synthetic, sell the real one, you know you make $10 by the end of the year. But if you don't have that expiry, you don't know that that's going to happen, right?
And when you say BitMEX has the transfers between the long ones and the shorts, is that the transfer in terms of like liquidation, like the ADL, or is it transfer in terms of like the settlement, like every other day or so?
The latter. Yeah, the latter. You can actually literally think of BitMEX almost as like an 8-hour expiring thing, which is kind of an interesting way to think about it. So every 8 hours, there's sort of this expiry that keeps these.
It's an expiry and automatic roll forward.
Yeah. Smart. Yeah, they're pretty smart.
Pretty cool financial innovation. In theory, you could write a wrapper over this to do something.
That would be awesome.
Cool. If you have questions, come find us at our booth. Otherwise, good luck. And thanks for coming. Thanks for